to those use cases, the way I've been thinking about it more and more, there are different kinds of arguments you can make when essentially you're arguing between a choice of things. And even we've talked about the comparison relationship where something is greater than, something is less than, or something is equal, or something is greater than or equal, or something is less than equal. These are all related somehow, although I will take out the less than or equal to, because for now it's not exactly mutually exclusive with everything. So you can make an argument that something is equal, and that functions as an argument against greater than and an argument against less than. But you can also make an argument that something is not equal. I don't know if it's greater than or less than, but I know that it's not equal. And then you're making an argument, opposing that conclusion or supporting the negation of that. But you're not really making two arguments at once, which is that it's possibly less than, and another argument that's possibly greater than. You're making an argument against, or rather you're supporting the negation of it's equal, which in effect, if we eventually talk about scoring, is going to have an effect of changing the outcomes. All these things. Marc-Antoine, you may be freaking out about the words I'm using right now, considering the process. I preface this by saying we are not following the process here. While you're off, I'm thinking way ahead. I'm just saying something here.
I never had a problem with thinking ahead.
No, I know you don't. But you might be like, why is Tim saying this of all people?
Listen. The whole point of the process is to make our disagreements clear. I don't see any other point.
Yeah, or well, also to figure out things we agree on is also the negation of our disagreement.
Yeah.
And to have some incremental processes, progress as well, right?
Yes.
Right, exactly. So I was throwing out some thoughts before we get started while we're waiting for Felix.
So while you realize that you want to model it like that, for me, that's just more reason to there being two different models. One is a representational one where support an opposed relation makes perfect sense, and there's another like more canonical data storage one indeed where only support relations would make sense. I think it just because there is such a thing as opposing. You might when representing an argument want to present the opposing relation, and it's just a matter of mapping that to maybe an underlying supporting the negation relation. So I think both are probably valid use cases.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is like with the incremental process, we get to a point where just because you said the user creates an argument opposing the claim doesn't mean you model it internally as an opposes relationship.
It depends what you're modeling. That's what I'm saying. If you want to model what the user says, yes, definitely model that the user says something opposes something, because that is something that happens. I am not disagreeing here. That means that needs to be stored in the canonical data underlying model argument map. I think they are two separate use cases. One you could consider data entry and visualization. The other one is more canonicality of arguments.
Right, and I think like when I think about this process, I'm explicitly not thinking about the front representation.
Yeah.
So I will, this is taking time. I will introduce you to this very old article by John Doyle about truth maintenance systems. And they were doing something, and I find it very interesting because he's interested in argument, like what are the dependencies between arguments in a system where people change their beliefs, and there's reasons to change and not reasons to change, and the way they do it, which is very close to what you folks have been doing in some ways, is every statement, every claim has a justification, and the justification is a bunch of premises and a bunch of defeaters. So the claim is believed if all the premises are believed, and disbelieved if any of the defeaters is believed.
But that's not how I would say I've been modeling things, because it's very often that you can believe in the what did you call it, the other side, and I mean, it's much more intricate.
No,
it's,
no, but
it's
that's
not an exact science.
No, I agree totally. But the reason it's one thing he said, which is interesting, is if you.
Hi, Joshua.
Hi, Joshua.
Hello. Sorry, I'm late.
If you, we haven't started. Well, we're discussing, but we haven't started recording, and I think maybe we should, because we were still waiting for Felix, and we
went ahead and started it up again because y'all were talking about things that.
Yeah, I think let's start
people might
recording.
find interesting. Yeah, it's recording now.
Yeah. One thing they go into, which is interesting, is instead of worrying about truth and negation, you worry about which statements are supported. And that's interesting because you can have support for a statement, its negation, neither or both, which gives you a kind of quaternary logic. Which he argues is better, that if you're just thinking in terms of truth, there's true, false, undecided. And he says, and then you don't know that you have support for both or either. And so he very much argues for the superiority of support versus the versus thinking in terms of support and justification instead of belief. And I totally see the point of that.
Can you share the link to the paper? I think I need more context to fully grasp the relevance here. But
absolutely.
79. I do like old papers. Well, old is relative, I guess, but
it's quite old. So this is the PDF is right there, but I'll just put the link to the page here. Where's the chat? There we go. Anyway, and the other thing I'm looking at these days is something called Canren, which is, and there's many versions of Canren. This is one of them that happens to be made in Racket. I'm not Lisp literate or Scheme. Hi, Felix.
Hi.
But Canren is in general are systems for reasoning which have the whole caboodle of variable quantifiers, the works, because I started writing examples of induction, deduction, abduction, and realized I bloody need my quantifiers, damn it. And I was hoping to avoid going into that level of complexity, but nope. And this is interesting. These are people I'm talking to. They're working on problem solvers, Canren-like, that also include the probability angle. So that's, anyway, we'll get into that later, but I did want to point out the truth maintenance system because I think it's highly relevant to some of the discussion we're doing. So he makes a lot of things out of scope. It's very much, this is about dependency between arguments, and it's separate from the data modeling, and he does a very nice boundary between both. And this colleague of mine argued, the one reason this went only up to a certain point is that they didn't have a good model of probability, and now that we have one, it's totally worth revisiting that work. So that's thing I'm doing on the side. End of that public announcement. Let's get back to cases.
Yeah, I got something that popped up right now for work,
Okay.
and I'm telling them I'm busy and trying to push this off until the end of our time. But I'll keep you up to date. But let's get started with the process here. We need to pick a use case right now, or requirement to work on next. Yeah, the previous one we did is just a claim is created to oppose another claim, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I was able to reschedule. Thank you. Okay. And how did we? Do you have the other model?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just have a supports opposes relationship. It's all just claim with a bunch of relationships between claims at this point. Claims only have a sentence, and then there's some constraints we worked into there.
Exactly.
And we looked at Stephen's alternative.
We decided
Yeah.
to postpone that.
Okay.
Yeah. So a claim is created to oppose another claim. That seems to already be integrated in here with the opposes relationship. Oh yeah, we finished that. Okay. So
And I'm having trouble with the modeling, by the way, but that's another story.
Okay. So we need to pick a use case that is either something you just want to make sure we get into the system, or that you think will illuminate part of the data model that you would like to see.
And for me, that's why I still proposed 11, right? Because this is part of the reason we started talking about the alternative model, because I believe that would be the solution to modeling this better, but we never talked into how to model it within this model. Well, I think we somewhat said it could be a node, but I propose 11 because then we can actually see in practice how we would incorporate it, which I think is a very interesting constraint.
No objection.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, okay, let's go for it then. Let's go for it.
Is it clear to everyone what a very convoluted sentence means? I couldn't write it more minimal, but it is a complicated constraint. Although I think
clear to me.
certainly all agree on it.
Yeah.
No, but keep going.
Oh,
I would say it's clear to me, but I don't see how this impacts the model at all, except as maybe adding a note.
That's what we would discuss if we go with that one, right? So it's simply that's between the what does it mean for claims to be equivalent? If claims are equivalent, if one claim is a negation of another, aren't then all the other claims that are the equivalent of the former also the negation of that other one? Like how do you
The
make
enemy? It's the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah,
Or
it's
the
a similar,
enemy.
yeah, it's a similar type of constraint, exactly. Except that that one has a twist to it, I think. But yeah, yes. So I would love to take up that one and then see why it isn't a problem for the model, or why it is, which might lead to some discussion on what the model should be or where the constraints are enforced if we eventually implement the model, stuff like that.
Okay, if nobody opposes, then this is the one we're going with.
Well, Bentley went away from camera.
Then we're going.
Because I think the first case, of course, if everyone agrees with this, is does everyone agree with the constraint, regardless of how to model it, right? Does everyone agree that this is a valid use case?
I do.
Yes.
To me, the key question that it raises is, I guess it makes me want to clarify equivalent. Like, when we say equivalent in this document, do we mean really, truly equivalent? Or
We haven't, yeah, in this process, in this process, we have not defined what equivalent means, except through a use case, which is that a claim can be declared or proposed as equivalent to another. But in future requirements to use claims is where we're going to have to dive down more into what that means and when that comes up.
Like, to me, the place when this enemy of my enemy is my friend starts to break down is if the two things that the equivalence relationship we're basing it on isn't actually equivalent, but there's a little bit of fuzziness. And I think that relation, that's very similar fuzzy, like, possible replacement, possible synonym relationship is
that is
valuable.
fully correct.
Yeah, I would say, like,
so the use case that I wrote indeed presumes exact equivalence. That's
right.
what it's implied.
I was going to point out in the note we have question marks on symmetric and transitive, and this does amount to resolving that, right? If it's symmetric and transitive, it's exact equivalence. If not, it isn't exact equivalence.
Yes, exactly.
Can you put in the description that this use case requirement assumes exact equivalence?
Or it could be that we need to discuss the use case of exact equivalence first, if that can be written up as one.
I think if you accept modifying the use case to mean exact equivalence,
No, exactly. That was implied.
Then we can just declare that and design it.
Okay, a bit of context. We started with a user asserts that two claims are equivalent in meaning. The way it was formulated, it did kind of imply symmetry. So I actually vote for removing the question mark on symmetry because we didn't say one claim was equivalent to another. For what it's worth, that's not really important. But it's also, on the other hand, it's a user assertion. And I don't know if we had implicitly that it's valid versus asserted.
If symmetric means if A equals B, then B equals A, is
Yes.
that? Yeah.
I also like that comment, second one. It's a distinction between is it what someone claims it to be versus what it is in reality, which are two separate. So that's, I would argue.
I mean, like until someone opposes something, it's true, I guess.
Well, that's where it
right.
gets
and even if
interesting.
they oppose it,
And how do they oppose it? Do they oppose it by removing it, or do they oppose?
We
it
haven't gotten there yet. We have
yeah,
not
but that's it. It has to do with exactly this discussion. What does it mean?
Yeah, right.
And user. So let me remove the question mark on symmetric because I think that's kind
okay.
of I think that's okay. The question, the
Everybody
real
is,
question is transitive.
Everybody knows exactly what's meant with symmetric, because it's important.
We
if
just
A
went through
equals
it,
B,
yes.
then B equals A. That means
Exactly.
if claim one is equivalent to claim two.
And transitive,
like
if
this,
if A is equivalent to B and B is equivalent to C, then we can say A is equivalent to C without further ado.
I also agree with that.
Which again makes sense. Now, in the case of user assertions, I would say maybe, and in the case of this is what, like a user asserting makes it true, then I would say probably.
But I would argue.
Wait. I think we're undoing what we did before, which was kind of the purpose of this requirement here, which was to kind of state each case as a separate requirement rather than just kind of building it.
Yeah, but we're kind of checking what we mean by this, which
because
I think
it was
is
implied, right?
Yeah.
That's why I said
yes, but so don't remove the question marks. I think let's
I'm
throw
removing
in
the symmetric, but
that,
I'm not removing it on transitive. I'm certainly,
okay.
But I think symmetric we can remove given the formulation.
Fair enough. Yeah, and for me, as part of this, we don't have to change anything. But for me, when a user asserts that a claim is a negation of another claim, I really read that as a use case more that a user wants to model that two claims are equivalent, not as a user somewhere states that and shares it with the world.
Right. Well, it essentially a relationship has created between two claims,
yes,
saying they are equivalent.
Yep.
All right. So, but let's get then to this line 11. What do we need in the model here to capture that?
It depends on how that model is used. Like that's what it boils down to. Like you need to actually represent data in this proposed model here and execute operations on it, use cases that we outline, to then see how the state should be modified to fit. Like, does that mean that if that's my question here, right? If you add an what is it, a negation, right? Yeah, a negation from one claim to another, will we introduce also a negation relation for all the equivalent claims to that other claim negation was made, or do we just keep it on one?
We don't have to. And this,
who decides
I think,
when is a model correct? How do you traverse the model?
Here's the thing: is that with this incremental process, as long as it's good enough for what we have here, it's good enough.
And for this use case, we can assume that the other negation relations are implied.
Okay, there's two separate questions. One is, are these extra relations materialized? Which I don't think is what we're arguing here. It's, are they assumed valid? And there's a separate question, which is not there, but I'd like to kind of throw in, is when the user adds a negation, will he see, well, you're not only negating to this, you're negating to all of these, which are in the equivalence class, like, because that would help the user take an informed decision about introducing the negation.
Which is maybe a separate use case that we need to add then, because it is a valid use case to me.
Yeah, but I mostly wanted to make the point that this is about the, what do we mean by this line 11? It's also, what are the implications for the user is what I'm trying to have us think about. And vice versa, when I'm adding an equivalence, I should see, you're not just drawing this equivalence, you're drawing with the transitive, you're drawing the equivalence to all of these, which is the transitive closure. And you're also negating all of those, which is—
Then begs the question, to which one of all of those do you draw the link? Is it random?
It's
How do you
absolutely—
traverse it?
I don't
Like,
think that, I don't think that affects the model, right? I don't think
do it, Stephen.
Exactly. I think the question is, does the model here support that use case, or do we need to add an element to the model?
But the questions I'm asking, and I think Mac and Twan are asking, is exactly, I mean, yes, it supports it, but how, right? I mean,
what does it mean to support it?
It's the same as ones and zeros, like any binary format can support anything you think about. It doesn't make it easy to use. It's not because you can do anything with it that it's a good model. So the questions I'm asking is like the layer around it that actually consumes the model. I'm trying to envision and questioning you on what would that layer have to do in order to use this model. And what I'm saying is, well, I see a lot of traversal that needs to happen. There's a lot of constraints that are not enforced by the model. You might be able to violate, etc.
Okay, so
Agreed.
Yeah,
I think that this brings up an important point of the process here that we haven't fully discussed, and which is, you know, if we think of it as kind of agile, right? With an agile process, it's like at each step, each iteration, you have supposedly something you could deploy to production, right? What does that mean here in this case? Do we have a complete model that we can hand off to everybody and say, build it unambiguously, right? And while the answer is no, because we know there's ambiguity here, right? The ambiguity here is, okay, when I have a user declare that something is, what is it? It's equivalent to another claim that is a negation of another claim. Do I create that extra negation? Do I create negations to everything? Or do I only create the one relationship and let the graph figure it out? That's an ambiguity in this model. I don't think we're actually going to stop and build anything at this moment. So I don't think we should spend time resolving that ambiguity, because sometimes these things get resolved when you add more use cases. Like if we stop and make that decision now about, do we create all those links, or do we leave it up to the runtime to figure it out? I feel like we'll be wasting time.
I think there's, again, I said there's a question of, do we materialize, which is not the relevant question. The question is, do we establish the relationship between the individual claims, which are one sentence each, or do we establish the relationship between equivalence classes? And that's really
matter
the
of
question.
documentation.
Yeah.
And how to document it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tim, just on process, you were saying that we will have future use cases. Stephen's attempt was to create a use case to force that decision. So just because he kind of wasn't able to phrase it in a way that you felt to break the model, the problem is we need to help him phrase it to where we can explore that, rather than saying, you know, because it doesn't, you know.
Yeah, well, maybe it's on me to find a different use case that actually does break the model, and probably has to do with other constraints that are derived from these.
Yeah, I can't think of any.
I
mean, I think the way you phrased it could be interpreted
I would consider that. Yeah, we could solve it through a model by exactly creating an instance diagram that shows that. The problem is, I think we're making a premature decision as to which way it should go. So the question here is, do we want to capture and also maintain a parallel instance diagram?
Would be very
so
much,
these.
I think that makes perfect sense, because without these instances, it becomes very abstract. And then all of these potential violations of the model are hidden. So yeah, I definitely would argue for an instance diagram.
I tend to agree.
I
go ahead.
I think I disagree, because I don't think we have enough criteria to make a decision one way or another. The decision is arbitrary at this point. And that being said, if it's arbitrary now and we change our minds later, we'll have to refactor. Whereas if we acknowledge we haven't made the instance diagrams, and 2 months from now we decide to create instance diagrams, they will have to match all these use cases we've incorporated. So those constraints are documented here, and we can make the decision based on a larger collection.
Which decisions are you referring to specifically now?
Then we have
that we can.
Whether or not we materialize every single negation relationship, or
whether we have an instance for an equivalence class. Right?
Let me try. It's not a use case yet, but let me try to think about the downstream consequences that I think we could make into a use case, just as a process. What I see is, if I personally think the consequence of doing it on the equivalence class is the user will perceive himself or herself as working on the sentences. Like, equivalence classes are very abstract. So for the user has made an operation at the sentence level. And when we contest it because of something else in the equivalence class and we don't show the original sentences, the user will go, but I didn't say that. So I would tend to want to capture the original sentences to make sure that whatever opposition, we can say, well, this is where the contradiction, the attack happens. It's at the level of those sentences. And if those are not the ones you chose, then, well, it has an impact on the ones you chose because of an equivalence relation. And here's the equivalence relation. And maybe this is the one you'll want to contest.
Are you maybe implying, I think I agree, Marc-Antoine, but maybe another way to put this is that an other use case might be that you want to draw a negation from a set of sentences. What do you call equivalence class in this case, I think?
For me, I did say earlier, for me, the question you're asking, Stephen, can be, is isomorphic to the question of, are we drawing the negation between sentences or equivalence class of sentences?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what I would like to have a resolution on.
Yeah, and I'm saying for a user, if we don't record the original sentences on which the negation was asserted, it will be disruptive because they think, oh, this is not what I said. It's better to say, oh, the attack is actually on these other sentences, and these two are connected by a separate equivalence class link. So maybe you want to contest the negation, or you want to contest the equivalence class link. But for me, it's at the user. Like, I think the notion that for the user's sake, we want to record where the links were drawn on which specific sentence. And for me, that's part of the use case. And maybe we need to reformulate the use case to capture that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it actually represents two separate use cases. And the question is, which one are we doing right now?
Okay.
I think I'm saying it's the same use case, but Tim?
No, yeah, but it's not clear the way it's written that is.
No, exactly.
Well, the one I implied was on the group of sentences where the user decides that on a set of equivalent sentences to draw negation to another set of equivalent sentences, whereas indeed.
Right, but you're talking about now an object that doesn't exist in our design, which is a set of sentences, right? So you would need to create, we need those prior use cases to do that. one thing I will point out too is what we were discussing in terms of, you know, how to materialize and that sort of thing. A lot of these decisions are not based on features, but on constraints, right? System requirements. So when you're talking about usability, what the user sees, that's a usability constraint. When you're talking about a trade-off between, you know, performance, storage, cost, these sorts of things, these are also constraints. And we have none of these in this so far. And so the decision would be arbitrary.
No, but I think that, okay.
I understand that we were talking about two totally different things here. We were talking about two totally different things, but I would just like to draw the point that you know, we shouldn't make decisions based on constraints that don't exist.
These, in my opinion, are highly functional domain constraints. They're not non-functional.
But you can create a constraint that says, for example, the user sees all sentences of equivalent.
Yeah. So I think that's the way forward.
Those are.
I think that's the way forward. As you say, it's probably that should be the focus of the use case, that a user can operate on a set of sentences, which is
and I think the examples I gave depend on these. A user disagrees with the assertion that two claims are equivalent, or disagrees with the assertion that two claims are opposites, negations, sorry. And we need those to treat the case I was given where he's shown the negation in the wrong way and not with the exact link he made and blah, 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 blah. So I think it's important to go through them and maybe table like this. Okay, what is it at the use case level? Let's think about it.
Those are things you can put in there. I mean, I don't see it as a use case. I see it as a requirement. I see it as a constraint.
Yeah, but I'm proposing making it more as a use case.
Being...
I'm saying, can this be made into more of a use case? The idea is if a user looks at, and it can be done from either way, by the way, but let me do one direction at least. If a user looks at the negation of a claim, the user will also see claims that are equivalent to the negation. And if the user looks at the equivalence of the of a claim, no, that's different, sorry. Or if a user looks at the negation of a claim, it will also see claims that are equivalent to that negation while looking for the negation. And this is the corresponding use case to that requirement, I think.
Stated.
Stephen, do you agree with that?
I mean, a lot of that goes into kind of UI design, right?
Yeah, but it's a requirement.
Anyways, to see, and you want it to like have access to all these.
Sure.
A user should be able to access.
Sure, I fair with that distinction, but when basically, if a user asks for the negation of a claim, then they should have easy access to all the claims equivalent to that negation and see them as if they were negated, even if they were not explicitly added as negation. I think that's the use case.
Yeah,
that corresponds to that requirement.
This can be done with many different models. So this is probably implementation detail. So.
And with this model here, it can be done with the model.
I thought this was a bottom-up use case-driven process, so I'm very confused now.
I'm not against it. I just said, hey, it's possible. So we need to figure out, okay, figure out something that actually requires the model to support
the presentation. What do you call just mere presentation concerns? Aren't just mere presentation concerns. These are use cases that should drive these modeling efforts. As far as I don't see you.
Then I don't I don't see this as being a fruitful use case. The things that would drive this is, what does it mean for something to be equivalent or a negation?
Yeah, but it's implied by this constraint indeed, and phrased as
no.
I don't know.
Stephen, question to you. my sentence, I think, is the use case that drives this constraint. Do you agree or disagree with
The one
that?
you mentioned before, or did you write it? Yes, I agreed when you stated before, yeah.
Okay, so what I'm proposing as a process is that we try to, as much as possible, to replace constraints with use cases whenever possible, or at least to have both and match them, to say this is the constraint, this is the use case, but I think we need both.
Yeah, well, and as I said before, I also think that the use cases should really be user stories, but we can decide to keep that for Fridays, but I think it would be highly beneficial to write them as such in this process as well, including the
yes. So let me actually write it down here just as a comment, and let's see if we can agree to add it, because I think it's useful to do so. When a user inquires about the negation of a claim, the user should see all claims equivalent to that explicit negations, even if those claims were not
I mean, if you get to, why we even care about negation or equivalence, right? That's what we should be focusing on, is what does it mean, equivalent or negation? And it's like, well, if I make an argument supporting a claim, I'm automatically supporting all its equivalent claims, and I'm automatically opposing all its negations, right? That is a place where it matters that you have equivalence.
Yeah, as I originally, I think, wrote it, I also introduced negation with a complete, so that use case, something along the lines, I want to see all supporting and opposing arguments to a claim. I think that's where it came in. I can check. I wrote something similar on Slack. But yeah, overall, I agree with that. Negation has all to do with centralizing underlying arguments.
I think we're spending a lot of time getting tortured over words again, when I would be more inclined to just accept this constraint or this rule into the thing, because we all agree with it, right? Just accept it, say it's completed because it's supported by the model, and then let's evolve from there to the places where it actually matters, rather than trying to reformulate this into something else. I mean, it says something meaningful to us that we want to capture. We want to capture that an equivalence of something is a negation of its negation. And you get it.
But are we okay with adding my user story to the definition or something?
I think it's something separate than Timothy suggests, but I'm okay with either. You guys can decide.
Something separate? Okay, I'm putting it in a new column for now. And we'll think about.
Well, definitely add it to the list of the suggestions, because it's a good one. And I think what Timothy suggests.
Yeah, I think it's
considering a separate use case.
Okay, I personally think it's equivalent to that requirement, but
model, I think it also has no impact on the model. I don't think it changes the model.
No, because it's equivalent.
Yeah, but I keep finding it a bit short-sighted to say that, because it's literally the same as saying, oh, you can represent everything as ones and zeros so it doesn't impact the model. It's like, yeah, sure, you can resolve everything by not talking about it, right?
Right, but I don't see what the outcome the outcome of discussing that right now.
I think that the point is, this does not contradict the model. If we want to change the model, we need to find things that contradict the model, and this isn't it yet. And I think what would contradict the model is, and by the way, I'm okay with local negation, keeping the original sentence, and maybe or maybe not materializing, but if we materializing, saying this is derived, so that we know that this comes from that.
For now, just documented that we agree that it is implied at the very least. Yeah. Let's go with that.
I mean, Stephen has a point that right now we have a very simple model with lots of constraints. Like,
yeah.
I think this analogy with like only ones and zeros with constraints is not very far away from this.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a moment where all models take the form of object. Object.
Yeah.
And we're not far enough from that.
Well, maybe we should pick a use case that actually adds some extra classes. We haven't had to add a single class. Let's think of something that can add a new class here or something.
I approve.
Well,
yeah, Stephen, go ahead.
I haven't written it in the list, but just brainstorming. I still like to highlight the problem with these different bound contexts, but we don't need to discuss them now. But that's my motivation for maybe adding something like a user wants to, I would say argue against a negation or something in that sense. Actually, there might be similar, yeah, because that draws a line between like discussing the present model versus actually modeling. Maybe I think that's a discussion worth having, because I think I would model that as a separate class that then later acts upon this simplified model.
So we had disagreeing with equivalence, so I'm adding disagreeing with
equivalence or negation. I'm fine with either.
Yeah.
Discussion.
So let's make that proposed, because you know what, I agree.
And what are the other proposed ones, Tim? A pre-existing claim is used to support another claim. I would argue.
Another.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Another fundamental one. The basic foundational use cases are that a user disagrees with that. A user opposes that a claim supports another claim, right?
Or even a user disagrees with the claim. This might be even more foundational.
Yeah, they are more conventional. I also think they're easier in that sense.
Well, that's the one you had here, right? The claim is created to oppose the support of one claim for another claim. And I think that is foundational also. So I'm happy to work with that as well, because it will pretty much force us to materialize support. Yay.
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. Mine and Joshua's examples are very unclear as to what it means by oppose. Because we there's a claim is created to support, a claim is created to oppose. But what does it mean that a user opposes? We've been thinking maybe adding an argument against, but we haven't. What does it mean that a user opposes?
So let's get into it. So there's two proposals. Is this one still being proposed? Or is this one, is one of these necessary to get there, by the way? Maybe we need, not sure. No, we have pre-existing. Nah, it's okay. We can I make this one unproposed? Because I don't think it's as urgent as the other two.
Unproposed.
I think 21, according to Tim's logic, would already be supported by the model.
It would be, but we have to incorporate it into the thing.
We have to agree that we think it's a real use case.
Yeah,
and that it's supported by the model. Yeah.
To my eye, line 20 is the most basic guy that's of the ones that are left to be considered. And my evidence is that it uses the fewest words.
Yeah, but it uses more new words than 21. 21 uses no new words.
That's true.
21 can be done very quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's do 21. Let's do 21.
I agree with 21, and I would say it's completed and already supported. Same logic as before.
I agree.
Same.
Anyone
Okay, good.
Disagree?
Anybody or be forever silence completed.
What did he say, Timothy? You don't disagree or you do disagree?
Does anyone
disagrees. Okay, 21 out of the way. Now let's go to either of 19, 20, 24, 23. I think they're all useful, but I'm happy with either.
I would say 19 or 23.
23.
I think 23 and 20 need more. We need to discuss what it means more before we can do it. So they need to be massaged before we can design it.
Okay.
Well, that's
also good.
Want to spend time.
That's what in progress means.
Yeah, if we all want to do that, I'm okay.
Yeah,
with that.
we did agree that we can stop doing it and put it back on the backlog if we don't want to delve into it now.
True. Yes, in progress means this is the one we're talking about. So.
Yeah. I'm fine with either. You may decide, Timothy, unless there's a Felix,
I think any one of those three is useful to go in.
19 is the one that will have the most immediate and probably easiest to design impact on the model.
Then let's do 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm keeping the other two proposed. Okay, a claim is created to oppose the support of one claim for another claim. So that means the support itself, which right now is an arrow, needs to be materialized so we can point to it.
Right, I think it now becomes at the very least an association class, right?
Yep.
I think we need to pull out the class.
Yep, so claim support, took support.
Just checking in with Bentley because we haven't heard from him. Do you agree this is a valid use case to support in the model, Bentley?
I am not interested in this area, so y'all go ahead, and when we get to something I'm interested in, I'll participate more.
Okay, but so no objection, in other words.
No objection. Yeah, and I'm listening. You can rest assured I will pop in and play.
Cool.
Sorry, trying to remember the syntax here, and obviously I don't have it yet. What the hell was it again? I've done this. Grep. So it is dot. That's no, that's in the 10 or one dot here. Okay, so maybe spacing. Claim support. Does that help? Are you happy? No. Why? Error. Yes. Okay. Cannot have more than two. Oh yeah, that problem. Yes. Cannot have more than two associations. That's a stupid limit.
Oh, that sucks.
Let's see. Oh, please.
Otherwise, Graphus goes haywire. Doesn't know how to draw things.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, it is as simple as that. It doesn't. That's ridiculous. Claim and two. Oh yeah, it's let me just.
So claim equivalence class.
No,
do we agree?
That's something we had not agreed on. I'm just trying to play with the syntax here. Sorry.
Okay. So maybe in the meantime, while you do that, we can start discussing what that new thing is. I would simply argue it's something as simple principle as a relation, maybe, but open to alternatives.
A relation,
support relation, or a...
I mean, we already have the support relation, but it's a class now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's work with that, and I'll try to fight with the syntax later, and it may not be possible. Maybe that's a fundamental limit of plant UML, which I was not aware of, and which sucks to high heavens, because we're going to materialize all these kids. What we can do probably is, instead of saying, oh, it's an association class, let's make it a full class with arrows towards the claims, source origin, and that will work. How's that? Support, actually, let's have the claim on top. Claim, support, supported. Or should I call them source target? Supporting. And there's one, presumably. I don't know if we agreed on that.
I would say it's implied by the use case, yeah.
Yeah, and then
no.
and then I
mean,
can let go of this, and I can actually let go of this, and I can assign this to this. Isn't that wonderful? I think. No.
Barf. Yeah, what are you thinking, Timothy?
Just that what we haven't captured is a claim supporting the support.
No,
No.
but this was an intermediate necessary step to get there, right?
Right. But
Yes.
yeah, we haven't finished the use case.
We're not done. We're not done. So we have supporting supported, and then basically now the question, what I think would solve that personally, but I will ask for buy-in before I just write it in, is let's make support into a subclass of claim. And then automatically we have, it becomes possible for it to be a target.
That's also how I suggest to implement it, yes.
The only question we have to answer is, does a support have its own sentence?
And there we go with the constraints, I think, in the... So maybe you're right that we did need to add to the model more. Let's see where this goes.
Just making them into...
Felix, how do you feel about the inheritance from claim by support? That's a big statement.
I don't know yet. I have to see.
I think we need a confirmation from everyone on that, because it is a very bold.
It is a bold, yeah, it's a bold step. It's definitely one that requires buy-in.
Okay, but if we all aligned, all better.
There are no. It's only a big step because it's something we've debating about as the final design. But the question only is, does this support what we have so far? So, you know, even if I don't want an argument to be a claim, I can support it now because it works.
Yeah, it's a big step because it also means that support has a negation. And it means that support can have equivalences to it. That's why it's a big step, because all of the existing relations, because of the Liskov substitution principle, all of the existing constraints and relations that we agreed upon before for a claim now also apply to support. That's why it's a big step.
So maybe we're not ready to do that. That's interesting, because I guess it
I think it's true, but yes, I think it's definitely something. I guess
it's, you know, it works for the current model, and even though it works for or doesn't work for future use cases, we don't have those, so it's ambivalent. So I guess you can do it. I guess we can do it, and then if we come up with a use case that violates that, then we need to.
Let's take it from another angle, which I think is also valid. Do we have alternative models? do we have another way to do this use case, which is being able to say,
Sure. It's messy, but simpler in terms of the implications, which is we keep the support class as a thing all its own, and then a claim can, like a support would have to then be able to support a support, or you could just have a relationship from a claim to a support that is support.
okay,
so there is a way to
should
do
we
it
try
without
to-
inheritance. It just kind of
Exactly.
gets a little messy.
Let's try it. Let's try to write it down.
That is the alternative, and it's a valid alternative to consider.
Let's try to write it down and compare them, okay? I think it's useful to actually go through that. So what you're saying is, say that again.
You remove the inheritance, and you
Yeah.
simply also add relation from supporting to the support class. So supporting is not only from claim to claim, but also from claim to support. That's the thing we wanted to capture. And if you don't inherit, you need to add that relation manually.
So what you probably need in that case, because supporting goes right now to a claim, now it needs to be either claim or support. So basically what you need in that case is an abstract interface over both, so that the supported can go to the abstract interface. The
Or
abstract
two different types of relations. It could be one, could be claim supporting, the other one could be support supporting it. You don't need to abstract necessarily. I mean,
no, okay, because I don't see how else to do it, because, and maybe that's me, but if you're saying like union types in, you know, what you're saying otherwise is claim or support.
No. I'm saying you don't even need to. It might be that. Wait, we said that. Yeah, it might be that a claim can only support a support class, but not that a support cannot support a support class. That you stop the relation there. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
you could have two separate classes. You'd have a like a support.
A claim
I guess
support
it's a claim
and support.
and support.
Claim support and support. Oh,
Exactly.
I see.
So you
Lord.
cut off the recursion there.
Okay,
that's the alternative, or not, right? But if we do inheritance, then the recursion is implied. We can always apply a constraint to them all to say that we don't allow that. But if you do inheritance, the recursion is implied.
Got it.
So we're now over time, and I'm over time on the work meeting I put off, but my coworkers put off the work meeting another 5 minutes or something. So I may have to go in a minute. And anybody who needs to go, let us know, and feel free to go.
I promised to get back to someone for work, so I also have to cut it short soon.
Okay.
But
we should probably just finish up this model here, and then if anybody now, while it's fresh in our minds, think of what use cases would lean towards putting it back as a subclass versus continuing down this route.
Yeah.
I think this is very confusing, because, for example, is the supporting also a claim support or a claim?
Well, we don't have a use case that is a user supports the support of a claim, right? The user supports the support of a claim. We don't have
the
those.
question is, are you supporting the claim support with the pure claim or a claim support? Or can you?
The use case is a claim. A claim is created to support
so this is claim.
The support of a claim.
Okay, so the supporting should be a claim. Sorry, supporting should be a claim.
I favor the inheritance approach. Obviously, it's also the one I have.
So do I.
I think
the
we'll
relevant discussion
maybe get
is
there.
yeah. Then the relevant discussions we need to have is like, what does it say about the sentence?
Yeah.
Like, is it stored?
So
is it inferred, etc.
We tried this. We see it's ridiculous, and I'm happy to see it's ridiculous. And let's.
I think that's major progress for us as a group, that we're okay with stuff being ridiculous as we go. I think we're getting better at accepting the intermediate steps.
Yeah, but I think it's worth writing the ridiculous model and say, okay, this is not working. Let's see why it's not working. And
Exactly.
I favor inheritance, and
It's semantically correct. That's why I prefer inheritance, but it does have implications of where I would say on the front end where you might want to add constraints, which are more like practical constraints, not necessarily semantical constraints of the model.
Yeah. So I've pushed this. I'm not pushing this because I think unless people want it, I think it's too absurd. But right now I've pushed this so we have it. And I know I'm the only one working on this repo, but at some point, maybe I could get others to work on it. And we have this.
You should push the absurd one.
We should push the absurd one. Okay, good.
Yeah.
You can even name it.
If nothing else, we can laugh at like a GIF of the evolution of our model over time or something.
Okay. Alternative support model. You got it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll think about the other use cases to get. Yeah.
Okay, I think this is the day, and we're meeting Friday.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
See you on Friday.
See you on
See you Friday.